It's 2 in the afternoon on Wednesday, November 12th here in Seoul. Welcome to ARIRANG News. I'm Laah Hyun-kyung. Let's take a look at the stories we're following at this hour. The leaders of South Korea and the U.S. vow concerted efforts toward addressing the North Korean nuclear issue. The two also recognize Japan as a vital partner in the matter. And one of the major accomplishments at this year's APEC summit is the endorsement of a China-led trade bloc. U.S. President Barack Obama and Chinese President Xi Jinping also meet on the sidelines. And the European Space Agency makes final preparations for a groundbreaking comet touchdown. The success or failure will be known at about 1 a.m. Thursday, Korea time. President Park Geun-hye is now on her way to Myanmar this Wednesday after attending this year's APEC summit in Beijing. One of her last orders of business in China was a meeting with U.S. President Barack Obama. Now, the two talked about the need to work more closely on disarming North Korea of its nuclear weapons. Choi Yoo-sun files this report from Beijing.
Presidents Park and Obama, meeting on the sidelines of the APEC summit in Beijing, highlighted the international community's concerted efforts in addressing the North Korean nuclear issue. The South Korean president, who met Chinese President Xi Jinping a day before, also shared Beijing's stance on its ally Pyongyang's nuclear ambitions.
President Park told President Obama that China is more determined than ever before about not accepting North Korea's nuclear development.
This comes after the Chinese ambassador to the U.S. recently expressed annoyance about Washington pressuring Beijing to better persuade Pyongyang to lay down its nuclear arms. Seoul and Washington recognize Tokyo as a vital partner in bringing Pyongyang back to denuclearization talks.
The two leaders exchanged views about the importance of cooperation between Korea, the U.S., and Japan. They also agreed to cooperate regarding President Park's peace initiative in Northeast Asia.
In response to some media speculation that President Park's endorsement Tuesday of Beijing's roadmap for a free trade area in the Asia-Pacific may upset Washington, Seoul's foreign ministry official clarified that all 21 APEC members, including the U.S., supported it. President Park heads to Myanmar on Wednesday for the ASEAN Plus 3 and East Asia summits. There, she will talk about the security situation on the Korean peninsula and address global issues such as the Ebola outbreak and threats posed by Islamic State militants in the Middle East. Choi Yoo-sun, ARIRANG News, Beijing.
So the APEC summit came to an end on Tuesday. One of the major outcomes of this year's meeting, at least for China, was garnering support for building a regional trade bloc, which would include countries that account for around half of the world's trade. Connie Kim has more.
At the close of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit in Beijing, leaders largely agreed on crafting a roadmap for China's vision to create a regional trade bloc. The Free Trade Area of the Asia-Pacific, or FTAAP, if seen through, would connect the 21 APEC member countries, which account for more than 50% of global gross domestic product and nearly half of world trade. Although currently nothing more than a topic of study, Chinese President Xi Jinping says the FTAAP would create the economic integration needed to ensure Asia's long-term growth.
We've reached a consensus that the strengthening of infrastructure and connectivity construction will open up new resources, promote economic development in the Asia-Pacific region, and improve competitiveness.
The FTAAP is seen as an attempt by Beijing to rival the U.S.-led Trans-Pacific Partnership, a similar trade bloc that excludes China and Russia. Forbes says China stands to lose $1 billion per year in exports if the TPP goes into effect. While the world's two largest economies are promoting competing trade blocs, Washington and Beijing did see eye to eye on bilateral economic cooperation in talks at the APEC summit. They agreed to cut tariffs on about 200 technology products, which will cut prices of semiconductors and GPS devices, more evidence that while China and the United States are rivals on the global stage, they're also partners who are very much intertwined economically. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
So, friend and foe at the same time, the leaders of the world's two biggest powerhouses loosened their ties and took a garden stroll near the Forbidden City before a private dinner at the presidential residence in Beijing on Tuesday. President Xi expressed hopes for establishing a foundation for a fruitful relationship between China and the U.S., while President Obama said he wanted to take their relationship to a new level, saying the whole world benefits when their governments work together. Now, the two leaders met again on this Wednesday. Reports say the two agreed to cut the greenhouse gas emission drastically by the year 2030. This is seen as a major breakthrough as the two nations together account for more than a third of all global greenhouse emissions. Now, one of the major accomplishments from the APEC summit, this time from Korea's perspective, was concluding FTA negotiations with China. With that trade pact, Korea has secured free trade pacts with 51 countries in total. As a result, prices of important products have come down, but some items have not seen much or any reduction despite tariff removals. Song Ji-sun has the details.
Korea's FTA history dates back more than a decade when the country signed its first deal with Chile in 2002. Since then, the export-driven Asian economy has aggressively pushed for free trade pacts to become the first among the world's top 10 trading nations to have such deals with the U.S., the European Union, and China. The latest edition gives Korean consumers tariff-free access to products from areas that represent 73% of the world's GDP. Only Chile and Peru have wider free trade territories. Korean consumers can enjoy imported products at lower costs, with fruits like cherries becoming much more affordable. Disappointing news for fashionistas, however, as the price of luxury goods hasn't come down by much, even after free trade agreements came into effect. Luxury goods producers hiked prices, and the Korean government levied additional individual consumption taxes on top-end handbags. The price of U.S. beef has also gone up as global demand for American beef soared in recent years. When the KoreaChina FTA goes into effect, Korean consumers will pay less for Chinese electronics products with a tariff reduction of 8%. A 30% tariff for Chinese mangoes and beer will also be removed gradually over the next 20 years. But it may take quite a while for consumers to feel the effects in their everyday lives, as Seoul and Beijing have yet to fine-tune the minor details, and parliamentary ratification in Korea could take months or even years. Song Ji-sun, ARIRANG News.
Korea's import prices dropped for the 8th straight month in October, but the Bank of Korea attributes the fall not to the FTAs but to slumping global oil prices. This is the first time that the prices have been on a downward trend for 8 consecutive months in some 13 years. The central bank says import prices went down 0.9% last month from September as crude oil prices dropped by more than 10% during this period. When compared to a year earlier, figures fell more than 7%, marking the 26th straight month of decline on a year-on-year basis. Export prices, however, rose 0.7% in October from a month earlier due to the weakened local currency against the U.S. dollar. Now, following disappointing third-quarter earnings figures, Korea's #1 tech giant is upping its efforts to tap into the world's #1 consumer market. Samsung is releasing smartphone models specifically targeting potential Chinese customers, fighting off threats from Chinese handset maker Xiaomi. Kim Ji-yeon has this report.
Knowing that maintaining global leadership in the smartphone market will be difficult without winning the Chinese market, Samsung Electronics is gearing up for a renewed push in the world's most populous country. From marketing to product development, the Korean tech giant is tailoring products specifically designed with the Chinese market and its 1.4 billion people in mind. Take, for example, the China W2015, a new premium smartphone that will be released in the Chinese cities of Shanghai, Chengdu, and Suzhou by the end of this year. Samsung is also reportedly releasing new models of its Galaxy A series in China later this month, with eyes on the low and middle-end smartphone market. This will be the first time Samsung Electronics is releasing a new smartphone lineup in China, all part of plans to make inroads there. When it released the Galaxy Note 4 in September, it was rolled out in the traditional cities of Berlin and New York, but for the first time, Beijing was added to the list. According to the US-based Strategy Analytics, Samsung Electronics led the Chinese smartphone market during the July to September period, but was trailed closely by Apple and Xiaomi. Kim Jung, ARIRANG News.
In the year 2012 for Korea was at its record high.
All of the day's important events close to home and around the world. Join Laah Hyun-kyung live from Seoul.
Shopping market thinks the true meaning of creation shines through. Scientists at the European Space Agency may make history Wednesday, Central European time, in landing a probe on a comet. If successful, it will mark a milestone, with the lander transmitting data of the comet to Earth for about a year. Son Jang-in has more.
Today may be the most pressing moment for scientists at the European Space Agency as they make final preparations for a groundbreaking comet landing. After traveling 6 billion kilometers since it was sent into space 10 years ago, the agency's 100-kilogram lander Philae will finally be separated from its mothership Rosetta and sent to the surface of a comet. The chaser became the first ever spacecraft to catch up with the comet in August and has been orbiting the comet called Churyumov-Gerasimenko for the past 3 months. If the landing is successful, the probe will accompany the comet on its trip around the sun with the aim of finding answers about the solar system and the origins of life. However, scientists say it's too soon to pop the champagne, as the flying and landing the probe is a very complicated process. The mission leader at the Operations Center hopes the probe, if everything goes to plan, will help scientists learn more about the composition of comets.
Of course, we fly Rosetta to learn everything about comets. For example, what are they made of? What kind of water is on the comets? Is it the same type of water that we find on Earth?
It will take Philae about 7 hours from the moment it's released from Rosetta to cover the roughly 20 kilometers to land on the comet. The touchdown is expected to occur 30 minutes past midnight on Thursday, Korea time. Given that it takes around half an hour for radio signals to reach Earth, the mission's success or failure will only be able to be confirmed at 1 a.m. Thursday. Son Jang-in, ARIRANG News.
Shifting gears, a resolution calling for North Korea to be referred to the International Criminal Court for human rights violations could be adopted by a UN General Assembly committee as early as next Tuesday. Citing a diplomatic source at the United Nations, Seoul-based Yonhap News Agency reports that the committee will hold a vote sometime between November 17th and the 26th. The source added, however, that there is a possibility UN member nations close to North Korea, such as China, could propose a revised draft to tone down the resolution. Now, although UN General Assembly resolutions are not legally binding, if adopted as is, the latest resolution is expected to further pressure Pyongyang to sort out its abysmal human rights situation. Following the government's announcement yesterday that it was ending underwater search operations for the still missing victims of the Seoul ferry sinking, the bereaved families have asked that the government start pulling the vessel out of the sea. The Oceans Ministry says the salvage operation will take at least 1 year and cost more than 100 billion won, or roughly $90 million. Officials add it could take even longer depending on tidal and weather conditions. And in other news, almost all of our daily errands can now be taken care of through smartphones these days. Long gone are the days when you had to physically go to the bank for simple transactions. At least that's the case in Korea. And now local banks as well as app developers are planning on providing even more financial services on smartphones. Shin Se-min tells us more.
Banking through smartphones is becoming easier and more common. What started with simple transactions is now shifting to more complex ones, like applying for mortgage loans. Uri Bank is hoping to release a product early next year that would let users submit essential information for such loans through a smartphone app. The information would then be looked over and evaluated by a bank representative. It's just one example of businesses using smartphones to tap into the financial services market. This week, mobile messaging service Down Kakao rolled out Bank Wallet Kakao, a service that allows users to transfer money to friends much like they would send a text message. It allows users to wire up to 100,000 won, or roughly $90 per day, without having to know the recipient's account information. Subscribers can even deposit and withdraw cash from some 75,000 automated teller machines just through a few taps of the smartphone.
Still, there are some risks. Currently, the roles that IT corporations and banking institutions are playing has not been revealed. So it's possible that improper management or other problems could arise. Customers need more clarification as what they are doing involves sensitive financial information.
Providing greater security will be key to expanding the market even further, especially with concerns still present after the personal data of at least 20 million bank and credit card users in Korea was leaked earlier this year. Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News.
Slowing economic conditions in Korea have led to a decline in job growth. Some 400,000 jobs were added in October from a year earlier, marking the slowest on-year job growth since June. Now, the total number of people at work stands at nearly 26 million. The agency attributes the slow growth to the falling number of jobs in the farming sector, stemming from slumping agricultural goods prices. The nation's jobless rate went up by 0.4 percentage points to 3.2 during the same period. Finance Ministry officials forecast that factors such as slow economic recovery and external uncertainties will continue to limit job growth in the coming months. Now, if you plan to be living in Korea in the year 2024, the job you might want to have at that time would be in the gas and energy sectors. The Korea Research Institute for Vocational Education and Training says energy technicians, gas researchers, and hygiene inspectors were the occupations with the greatest potential for growth over the next 10 years. The research was based on 7 factors, including compensation, employment stability, and working conditions. The institute adds the results reflect a growing interest in renewable energy, safety, and welfare. Other jobs that made it onto the list include aircraft technicians, food service administrators, and researchers in the life sciences industry. The first ever theatrical film on the highly sensitive issue of Japan's wartime sexual enslavement of Asian women has opened at selected cinemas across Korea. Our culture correspondent Park Ji-won tells us more about the movie.
The film recounts the story of a victim of Japan's wartime system of sex slavery who was taken to a military brothel in China when she was a teenager. Although documentaries and animations have been made about this issue in Korea in the past, this is the first fictional film released on the topic. And while employing elements of mystery, the film is based on testimonies given by the victims. The film's director Chu Sang-rok says he made the film with a sense of urgency as the victims are succumbing to old age.
More than 1,000 films have been made about the Holocaust, and although Japan's sex slavery system is another historic tragedy, I found it odd that not even one fictional film has been made on the issue.
Due to the film's intense subject matter, it was hard to raise funds for its production. The film's budget was less than $350,000, which came partly from the Korean Film Council, crowdfunding by the public, and a private donation by the head of the production company. All of the actors in the film waived their usual fees, appearing in the picture for free. The director hopes the film can deliver a powerful message to viewers.
It's about how history affects the present and shows us what lessons can be learned from the past. I think we need to remember this awful tragedy rather than shutting our eyes to the issue. We have a responsibility to tell the story to our future generations to ensure such awful things never happen again.
Tuning Fork will open in China early next year. And that's not all. 2 more films on the issue are also set to hit the big screen soon. Park Ji-won, ARIRANG News.
And now on to our next item for arts and culture. It can be tricky keeping up with the day's ever-changing fashion trends, but a couple of looks are shaping up to be the favorites of this winter season. Our Im Hyun-hee joins us with more. Good afternoon, Hyun-hee.
Good afternoon. Right, so fashion's always changing. It's tricky. It's hard to keep up with them. And I myself have a hard time as well. But this winter season, I found a couple of looks that I think everyone can go for. Take a look.
What's the hot fashion trend coming down the walkway this winter? As the coats begin making their seasonal debuts, this winter, be sure to keep your military-style apparel on hand. Camo print jackets and sweaters are turning out to be the it items this season.
With casual military styles on the linings, you will see luxurious pearl studs, making it look like a premium piece.
Another look you'll be seeing more of this winter is a cocoon-style coat. Ditch the tight coats and shoulder pads and go for a casual yet chic look with the generous cocoon coat.
The shoulder parts are rounded and loose, so it's slightly a free style, so pair it with leggings or tight pants to look slim and pretty.
Plus, you can't forget the fur. Whether it's a little accent or a full coat, it'll keep you warm while still keeping you fashionably up to date. This winter, steal the scene with these hot looks.
So the military style has been there all the time. What makes this time different?
Right, we have seen it before, but I'm not the fashion expert, but I did do a little bit of homework before I came in. So this time around, it's supposed to be more utilitarian in terms of looks, so much more practical. Some of the colors we're going to be seeing are khakis, some green, some forest greens, a lot of neutral colors, and so that's what's going to set it apart. It's very applicable and very relatable for everybody to wear.
And if you want to find out the latest trend, of course, people look to dramas, right?
Exactly.
The soap operas, and I've seen the military look quite often this season.
Recently, right, we have been seeing it, and so it is very relatable for audience members to see that, and they really do. We are going to be seeing more of it on the streets as well, this military fashion, because what the stars wear, of course, we want to follow in pursuit.
And you were telling me about this term that it's my first time hearing this, the normcore.
Normcore, very interesting term, right? So normcore actually stands for normal hardcore, and it's a new look that's pretty recent to this year, and it's all about having strong jackets paired with casual trousers, so it's a very chic, elegant, but at the same time very casual look.
Strong jackets?
Yes. Statement pieces.
Oh, okay.
Statement jackets are going to be in this season, so that's something you want to look out for. So stick with neutral colors again, like black, white, and some navies as well.
All right, so normcore is the word that I'm going to remember.
A hard word to remember.
Thank you very much, Hyun-hee, for today's report.
My pleasure.
Well, the skies are looking a bit cloudier at this hour. Mostly to partly sunny skies are seen in many regions, and the winds got much stronger, leading to a chilly afternoon. And the daytime highs in the other parts of the nation got up to the mid-teens, while the top temperature here in the capital will remain in the single digits. So daytime high in Seoul will only peak at 9, while Daegu and Gwangju tops out at 15 and 14, and Busan will climb into 17 this afternoon. And on to other regions. Jeju Island and Daejeon will be getting up to 16 and 12 later on, while Dokdo should see a high of 14. And tomorrow, which is the college entrance exam day here in Korea, it will be even colder than today, with lows dipping below freezing mark at -2 and high will only climb to 5 tomorrow. So please keep that in mind as you prepare for tomorrow. That's all for me today. Back to you in the studio, Hyun-kyung.
Thank you, Ji-hyun, for the updates. That's all we have for you now. Our next newscast is at 4 p.m. Korea time. I'll see you then.